Bridging Pre and Post-Departure Counselling for Iraqi Returnees. That is the headline for this second Talk2Connect podcast, aiming to bring caseworkers within voluntary return and reintegration closer together and to share experience and insights, whether you work for a state agency or an NGO, whether you work in Europe or in countries of origin. My name is Lisa Tallroth and I'm the host in all the Talk2Connect channels, which apart from this podcast also includes webcasts and webinar sessions. All of the episodes are still available online on YouTube or at the RRF website, reintegrationfacility.eu. Myself and the Talk2Connect team, we are located at the Swedish Migration Agency in Stockholm, Sweden, but today's guests, they are elsewhere in the world. So welcome Salome Maxeiner and Vin Balata.
Thank you. Good to meet you. Nice to meet you. Hi.
Welcome to the Talk2Connect podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you on this theme, how we can better bridge pre- and post-departure counselling for Iraqi returnees. But let's start with some introduction to get to know you. Vin, you are in Erbil, the Kurdistan region of Iraq. You're working as a senior project officer at the reintegration service provider ETTC. And tell us a little bit about what you do on a daily basis.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vin, as a senior project officer and counselor in European Technology and Training Center, ETTC in Iraq. We are currently working in Frontex project and we provide support, guidance and sustainable reintegration to returnees after arriving to home country.
You do meet with returnees every day. You perform counselling.
Yes, exactly. We provide counseling sessions and contacting them, arranging them, setting a well-structured reintegration plan for them.
And so do you, my other guest today. You are located in Germany, Salome Maxeiner. Welcome to Talk2Connect.
Thank you so much.
You're a counsellor as well. You're working with the NGO Caritas in Augsburg. And tell us what your days look like.
Sure, I'm happy to do so. Well, actually, my time is dedicated to two different projects. The first project is offering return counseling to interested or potential returnees. And since I speak Arabic, I focus on Iraqi returnees. So I'm very glad to discuss this topic. And then the second project that I'm part of is called Transnational Exchange 6. It is a training project for return counselors in Europe. And I organize workshops, conferences, and field trip for any return counselor interested. We discuss different topics such as country-specific information, vulnerabilities, and much more. Yeah. So these are the two different jobs that I'm doing within the Caritas Augsburg organization.
So everyone realizes that I'm the only one not speaking Arabic in this party, but yes. So we'll have to keep it in English, I'm afraid. And you both have a lot of experience from counselling on return and reintegration. So I'd like to pick your brain on this scenario, and I'm sure you recognized this. Let's imagine a family. We have Mariam, her husband Ahmed, and their 3 children. And they've been staying in Germany for 5 years, say, and this without a residence permit. They have a youngest who's only 3 years old and was born in Germany. And now this family, Hamoud, we can call them, they are eligible for reintegration support, both in cash and in kind. But they have only vague ideas on how to use this reintegration support amount. So what do you say? How can you as counsellors help them? And how do you start this counselling session? What do you do? Who wants to go first?
I think I should go first since I am meeting the family first.
Yeah.
So when a family like this comes to my office and we discuss, okay, return to Iraq might be an option, but they're not sure how they want to use the money. I talk to them about all kinds of life topics. So I usually start with housing. I ask them if they still have an apartment or a house that they own in Iraq. If not, I tell them that they can potentially use the reintegration budget for rent. Then I move on to the topic of, income, and I ask them what's their professional experience. Were they employees or were they self-employed? Did they have, for example, a small clothing store or like a mobile shop? And in many cases, they tell me, well, I had a small store, but then I sold it to come to Europe. Then I tell them, well, you could also possibly use the reintegration support to start a small income generating business. And then if they say, well, is a good idea, but what else could we do? I talk to them about health. If they are sick and they need medical care, the reintegration budget can also be used for that. And then in case they do need assistance for medication or more treatments in Iraq, then we can arrange that also pre-departure. They do have kids, so I also address the topic of schooling. Mm. We want to always make sure that kids are prepared in the best way to make the transition into the new schooling system. Yeah. So you see, there are different life topics, and I go from one, like the most important, if a family doesn't know where to sleep, I don't need to talk to them about schooling, so I kind of go by priority. But my experience has also shown that families who've been abroad for a long time, they do need some time to arrive and reintegrate, spend time with the family, get a better idea of the current situation in the country. And therefore, I give them advice, what they could do, but I don't sit down with them and fix special amounts of money allotted to the income and generating business, allotted to health, allotted to schooling, because I think, and Vin, you can take over here, that that is much better done than together with the reintegration partner.
Yeah, let's hear what you have to say, Vin. Do you find? I mean, it seems like if they have spoken to Salome, they should be pretty well prepared. But do you find when you meet the returnee that there still might be misunderstandings on how this reintegration support amount can be used and what they can do about it?
Yes, so for such a family, it's obvious and it's quite a challenging process for them to take a return decision since they have been abroad for a long period of time. So they may be stressed out and in a loss point. So once they arrive in home country, of course, they need someone to manage their expectations. They need someone to give them a clear vision on their return in their origin country. We as a ETTC, we once the family, let's say once the family arrive, we contact the family, we scheduling for them the counseling sessions. So we in a first meeting, we discuss all the necessary needs that the family needs to have upon their arrival, and such the Ms. Salome said. First of all, the important thing for them is the housing, residence place to stay in, and also the employment state, because the late applicant need a source of income in order to cover the family's living expenses. So if they were well informed about all the services on the project, together with us, we would support them and guide them in a direct way to cover their needs, especially in housing first, and in business startup, in employment situation, in education for children.
Yeah. Let's get back to the schooling shortly, but first I want to stay a bit with this managing expectations, because that is something that keeps coming up. I hear that a lot when it comes to counseling. And could you be a bit more specific according to your experience? What is it that needs to be clarified? Pre and post departure. Maybe we can. I'll give you a second to think about this, Vin and Salome. What do you experience? What needs to be clarified in order to manage expectations?
So my experience is that the greatest problem in counseling is partial hearing. So they hear the amount, and then they kind of stop listening. And I stress the fact several times that the greater amount of reintegration support is in kind. And many returnees, especially also to Iraq, they do struggle with the concept that they need to sit down with somebody, make a plan, and then together agree on how this money is to be spent. It is really, it is a struggle. And so they remember the first part of the counseling, hearing the amount, but then even though I'm 100% sure that I have talked to the clients about the in-kind assistance, it happens over and over again then that they complain to the reintegration partner, why can I not get cash, cash into my hand? And so I try to stress this as much as possible, but nevertheless, it seems that misunderstandings arise always when it comes to the amount of money they can use. So it's less for them, when they sit in my office, it's less about how the money should be used. They just want to know the amount. And I give them ideas. That's why I mentioned earlier, I'm not, deciding together with them. 200 euros should be allotted for schooling, 800 euros to housing and so on, because it doesn't make sense. At that moment in time, usually they just want to know how much money they can get. And it's my job to really help them understand this money can only be accessed together with the reintegration organization after a plan has been established.
Do you recognize this, Vin, from your perspective at ETTC in Erbil?
Yes. So, as you mentioned, the most of the misunderstanding we receive from the families, the individuals, overall the returnees, is that once they arrive, they want to receive the amount in cash and to spend it for their needs. But I think that it all starts from the pre-departure phase before they return in a part of eligibility criteria on their applications once they make a registration. So they need to be informed about all the guidelines and restrictions depending and based on the project's regulations, that there's certain services of needs, such as for this family, the education is an important part in their let's say service and reintegration support. Also the employment and the business, the housing. So once they arrive, most of them, they have a misunderstanding view on how to use their reintegration support correctly. Once we as ETTC make all the guidelines and let's say the procedures based on the project, they understand and get trusted that we need to guide them in a most sufficient direct way.
All right. So counseling. So reintegration it's about counseling. It's about planning and motivational conversations, but it can also come down to quite really practical matters. And now sometimes like communication, I was thinking on, how to reach the returnee, especially post departure, of course. How can keeping good communication channels be reassured? What are your experiences on this?
Well, I would say communication for me starts first with actually being able to communicate with the clients in their mother tongue. So I really have had this experience a lot, that it opens doors when they see, okay, this German native has made an effort to learn and study the language and culture, and therefore I do have better access, I would say, to the clients, and they feel like they can trust me maybe faster than someone who doesn't speak the language. But then secondly, I think what really makes a big difference for me in my counseling is in the last or final counseling before they fly home, we call ETTC on WhatsApp or in any other way, and connect them with the reintegration partner. Or in many cases, actually, ETTC has already reached out to the client, and then they talk to me like, hey, someone contacted me. Is this correct? Can I trust this? And then I reassure them. And I'm really very pleased, because I think it's a very good system that they are already speaking to the reintegration partners in the pre-departure phase. So I think, this system was not established way back when I started counseling 8 years ago. So I think there has been a really great improvement. But maybe Vin can share more on how either easy it is then or difficult it is to speak with the returnees once they are in Iraq.
Yes, so for all the returnees returning, they need to provide multiple contacts, contact numbering, in addition to the family or the individual's contact numbering, even if it was their own or their email addresses. It is very important to provide an alternative and additional contact addressing if is related to their relatives or their friends. So we try to use their, for example, WhatsApp or Viber, which I mean we use the social applications in order to reach out the returnee, or the relatives' contact numbering, the friends' contact numbering. But sometimes we face difficulties in reaching out to them. Once we see in their application there is no contact numbering, only the email addressing, and most of them, they are not answering to their emails. So they may only use the phone number. And the only way that we contact the counselor in the host country, or we will wait until the returnee contacts us.
So do I get it right? This is really a wish from your side that pre-departure a list, a quite large list of contacts is established and sent to you ahead,
yes,
so that you have some. I mean, you have different channels to reach out to the returnee. Otherwise, they might go missing.
Yes, we wish, as ETTC, after the returnee arrive, we wish to have many channels and many ways in reaching out the returnees, because we didn't want to make him late in his reintegration's plan.
Let's get back to our family, the Hamouds. As I mentioned, they have 3 children. The 2 oldest have been attending school during the stay in Germany. But now, upon leaving, what kind of information and counseling do you need to offer, Salome, in the pre-departure phase? You touched upon this earlier, but But
Yes.
tell us a bit more about how to prepare for the schooling situation.
Yes. So usually I start discussing schooling by asking which grade the kids attend. Then I also check which time in the year is it. Is it the beginning of the school year? Is it the middle? At the end? Then the next step for me would be offering that I can translate schooling certificates from German into Arabic, so they can then bring them to the school in Iraq, and that could potentially help with the enrollment. I also get in touch with the German schools, letting them know that a voluntary return is coming up and that the kids might, will be leaving the class. And if the school and the teachers are very involved, I've had some beautiful examples in the past. They also then help the kids prepare to say farewell to their classmates, and they make a little farewell party. So I think when it comes to kids, it's really important that to also include them in the pre-departure counselling. It depends on the age. If the child is 2-3 years old, I think it's a bit different. But if it's already understanding, there's a big change coming up, then I like to tell the kids also that they need to think how they would like to say goodbye to their friends, and that they can maybe think about what's coming next. I asked them if they've ever been to the country, and so I do make an emphasis there. But yes, so I talk to the German schools, and then the next step would also be for me to use an online inquiry tool. It's called SIRF. In Germany, at least, we have it available, all return counselors.
What's
and
that?
We can.
Yeah.
It is a tool for us to receive specific information on, for example, schooling in Dohuk. I can ask how many schools are there, what do they need to enroll. So I can get very specific information, because in this case, IOM, the International Organization for Migration in Iraq, would gather this information and bring it back to me. So, I can do research online, but it depends on the country. Not all institutions in every country are represented online, so sometimes it can get really challenging for me in the host country to gather very specific information. And therefore, I can use this tool that an organization in the country of return then seeks out the specific information I'm looking for. So then this organization can come back to me and say, yes, there is one school and they need document A, B, and C for the child to enroll. Or I could ask, okay, it's in the middle of the school year. Can the child still join the current grade, or does it need to go back? So this definitely helps.
There is a lot of possibilities to actually do research on the specific family and their needs.
Exactly.
But, and to you, Vin, to your experience, what is the best kind of preparation for school children?
The education support for the children is the main point in the whole reintegration support, especially for families who have the children's attending school, and who have children that are born abroad, because they find the difficulties, and it is very challenging for them to return their children, who their children they learned in a, for example, German language, and they didn't know their mother tongue and their local language. So they ask for the available German schools in the home country. So we, as a counselor, we have the information, and we give them the we inform them about the availability of the schools, private schools at first, because private schools are in English or in German language. Also in public schools as well. Also, we ask for their educational background, children's educational records to bring with them once they came to their country. Also, we provide them, inform them about the system, which differs from the host country system. So overall, we take care of the children's emotional well-being and academic year before the other steps of the reintegration supports.
Yeah, and this that Salome mentioned about gathering documentation, having it translated into Arabic in this case, documentation from the school. To your experience, how useful is that upon arrival and starting in the new school? Is that crucial to bring that with you from Europe, or is that something that can be arranged already after return?
It's very crucial for them to bring all the necessary documents related to their educational state back in home country, because in each school they are attending, they will ask for their original and previous educational records and documents. So it is very important for them to bring, and we always ask them to bring all the documents, educational background, educational records with you, because they will ask them here in home country.
All right, so this was the Hamoud family, and that profile, a married couple with the children, that is of course not the only kind of returnees you meet. So let's broaden the picture a bit. Salome, you mentioned, for example, that single men who wants to return to Iraq even before their application process is finished, that has become a growing kind of returnees in cases that you meet. And why is that, you think?
Yes, I mentioned that to you in one of the preparation calls. So I would say the majority of my clients are actually not families, but single men returning. And looking back into the last couple of years, there has been a huge influx of Iraqis since 2021 through the Belarus route, a certain migration route. And most of these men that then come to my office say they just seized an opportunity. They heard it is easy to come to Europe. Their lives were not great, but also not terrible in Iraq. And they thought they just used their luck. They heard good things about Europe. But then once they arrive in Germany and they are, then they need to live in refugee housing, which currently is extremely difficult because there are so many people arriving and not enough housing available, meaning just the housing situation is extremely difficult to live with. And the chances for language courses and integration is just really, really dire. And therefore, they come to their senses quite quickly that they probably made a wrong decision. They wanted to jump on the train, feeling lucky in Europe, but it turned the reality actually is that it was probably the wrong decision, and that they're not successful in any way in Germany or in Europe through the asylum system. I need to clarify that. If you apply for a working visa, you come as a skilled laborer. Of course, it's a completely different matter. But I'm only talking about persons who go through the asylum system in Germany.
And they are eligible for integration support, right? Even though their application process isn't finished.
Correct.
So what kind of help do they need from you?
So most of them haven't been in the host country for too long. So I don't need to talk to them about, do you understand that the situation in your country might have changed and so on. I do ask them often, did they leave because of personal problems, political problems, or was it an economic decision? And then if there is nothing, majorly dangerous to discuss, then I do explain the programs to them and ask them what they want from me. I'm not like, they are adults. They are the experts on their lives, not me. And I'm here to support them. And usually the answer is just get me out of here as quickly as possible. So their wish is to return as quickly as possible, because I do need to also explain that I do work in a very comfortable situation. I work for an NGO. The clients who come and see me come voluntarily to my office. No one is forced to come to see me. And usually they kind of have already made up their mind that they want to go back. And I do know that many counselors in Europe work in very different situations when clients don't want to return and talk about return and so on. But yeah, in my case, they want to leave quickly and ask for very little preparational support.
And what did you see of this group, Vin, the single men who didn't even stay throughout their application process in Europe? Do they need your help at ETTC?
So this kind of people, I can say that we didn't face a lot. Because as we are working in a projects, we have a RIAD system and go through that RIAD system. We receive the application and the information of the returnee through the system. If it's eligible, we make the process and start the reintegration process with them. If it's not, we inform them that she or he is not eligible.
Yeah, I know that you at ETTC, you meet with quite many forced returnees as well, right?
Yes.
And how would you describe the differences in reintegration between forced and voluntary returnees? I mean, we do know that they don't receive the same kind of support in cash or in kind support, but when it comes to just counseling on reintegration, trying to help, can you say something about the difference, whether you have a voluntary or a forced returnee in front of you?
So regarding the forced and voluntary returns, we as ETTC, we didn't make any difference between the counseling process of the forced returnees and voluntary returnees. On contracts, we make as the forced return, once he arrived to home country, as we all know, he is pessimistic, he is depressed because he returned by a force. So he is stressed out. So we make sure to give him the hope, to give him the psychosocial support for better orientating with the society, for coping with the surrounding, before making other process of the reintegration services with him. So we make no difference between the forced return and voluntary returnees. The only difference may be in their indicated in-kind assistance.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Salome?
Maybe just a quick one. Of course, the reintegration partner is the true expert on this because they actually see the clients and I don't see the forced returnees. But I would like to make maybe an educated guess that many don't really differentiate many of the returnees don't differentiate greatly between forced and voluntary return. I would say 50% of the clients who come to me, they say, I want tarhil, which is I want deportation. So then I tell them, well, this is voluntary here in my office. I would make this educated guess and say for many of them, there's not a big difference, especially those who have received a rejection from the German government related to their asylum case. And they do feel like there's no perspective for them in the host country, but it wasn't their choice. Many of them wanted to stay. They wanted to find work. They wanted a better life for their family. So, but that's just my guess,
So yes, I faced this as well, that they didn't understand what's the forced returnee and what's voluntary returnee.
So to wrap this up, what are your thoughts on how to better bridge the pre and post-departure stakeholders? You represent one each, and as we heard, you do have a bridge given that you communicate during the process. But are there more things to be gained from this, or what else do you think one can do to bridge this? You're both thinking hard. Salome, you go first.
Yeah, I'm... At this point, I would say I'm pretty happy. I think ETTC is doing a great job reaching out to the returnees, at least in my region, in the pre-departure phase. Again, I want to stress the fact that many of the Iraqis that I'm seeing, they're not really willing to go into details of preparing all different aspects of life after return. For them, it's important to first see the family, do all the cultural meetings and so on, pay their respects. And then they care deeply about how much money they can get. But all the details, it's more somehow taken care after return. And therefore, I think what does help is that you make sure the communication is fixed between the returnee and the reintegration partner. For me, at this stage, I think it's good. I don't have any suggestions right now to make it better, because I also believe that we cannot overcomplicate things. And I've also, spoken to some reintegration partners in the past, and they do tell me sometimes, the clients tell you one thing in the host country and then a completely different story in the home country. So, I think people care about how much support they can receive, that they understand what are their options, and then help them to really, get them safely to the airport and so on. Yeah.
And Vin, do you have any wishes on how to better bridge this process?
Yes. So as we discussed, I see that the first and beginning point starts with the pre-departure. Starts with the host country with the caseworker. So it is very important, and first for the returnee, and then for to make the reintegration go smoothly and easily, to be well informed about the eligibility criteria on their applications, on their let's say eligibility period. Also to be well informed about all the guidelines and restrictions based on their return, and based on the project's procedures, because as Salomon said, sometimes many individuals and many families they counsel, they may want something, and once they return to home country, they may change their plan totally based on their circumstances in home country. So the main point between pre-departure and post-departure is a very well arranged communications between the returnee and the service provider back in home country, because as quick as we reach the returnee, their reintegration, they may they may achieve a very smooth and stable, independent reintegration support back in home country.
I actually do have two more comments now that we're speaking. One comment is maybe just food for thought. I am still sometimes struggling with communication when it comes to illiterate people. In Germany, it's all about paperwork, and they cannot read or write. So I feel like, at least in Germany, we would need to do a better job providing material or explanations to illiterate people. And I've actually met quite a few Iraqis who are illiterate.
What do you do? What can you do?
In this case, often they ask me the same things over and over again. So they try to memorize it while they sit in my office. And often they don't tell me, and then I get a bit frustrated because I'm like, I just told you, you know. So it's sometimes a little bit of a process. And illiterate people, many of them, you know, middle-aged men who somehow had a relatively good job in Iraq and then struggling a lot in Germany, they do have their ways to, you know, they have ways to use other people and other means to somehow go through life. It's really incredible to see how much they then find other resources to make up for their illiteracy. But I do see, especially in this context, when we apply for so many programs, return programs, and different types of money, that it gets very overwhelming. So I do think we need better communication there. I'm always a fan of simpler programs. And then the second topic I wanted to mention briefly is also it's very hard for returnees to understand that once they've talked to ETTC, they've made a plan, that there are so many actors still involved in allowing the money to be spent. You know, it's ETTC then talks to the donor in Europe. They need to approve of the plans, then it goes back, then money is being transferred. And it's just a very bureaucratic process. And for the returnee who says, like, what, just give me the 400 euros, you know, what's the issue? They don't really understand how many different people need to agree so that the money can be spent. And I do wonder, you know, how ETTC explains this, you know, the long waiting periods and so on. Maybe Vin, you might want to touch on that one. I'm interested in the communication there.
Is that something that usually comes up, Vin? Why does it take so long time to get my money?
I agree with the Salman that for the illiterate people, we do have difficulties with them as well back in home country because they cannot learn, they cannot write. So till the end, so we always talking with them and face to face in order to make sure that they got everything clearly. So it's quite difficult for us as well to deal with them, but we make our best to clarify for that individuals all the process in face-to-face sessions. As for the second topic, we as ETTC, we do 3 counseling sessions with the returnees. First counseling sessions, we call them for the general information on them, and also to explain for them all the process and all the available services, and give them the real expectations that in how to manage their life, how to cope with the society in the first session. And then in the second session, we receive from them their plan, their idea on the business, let's say the reintegration plan, whether it's a business, housing, education, or any service that they want, depending on their circumstance. Then in the second meeting and first meeting, we explain for them not just only one time, maybe 2 times and hundreds of times, in order to make sure that that individual have a clear and a sequence of pictures behind her or his eyes or in their mind, all the process and in how to spend their reintegration support.
All right, so we're gonna. It's about time to finish now, and we have touched upon many challenges that comes with this work. You have. I just want, in the end, hear something about when you find your work as most rewarding and what you like, or what you like the most with working as a return and reintegration counselor. Salome, what can you say about that?
I think I really appreciate the direct contact with migrants, Arabic-speaking migrants. You know, I've done my part. I've studied the language, the culture, and so on. And once I get in touch with them and we speak, it really, like, their faces start to shine because they meet one of the few Germans who made the effort to be the bridge, you know, between cultures. And so it's always an honor for me to really spend some time with them, talk about life, and to see their trust in me. So I really appreciate it. Many of them do stay in touch with me once they've returned. And they do reach out to me if they feel like there's an issue still after, let's say, 4 months in Iraq or 6 or 7, for me working with them and just seeing that they're happy to meet someone who meets them halfway. Yeah.
And Vin, when do you find your work the best?
Me as a counselor, I really feel glad when I see that an individual from first counseling until the further counseling sessions, their situations got very increased. Especially in socially, because most of the returnees we face, they have a psychosocial issues and they are in a depression state. So I really feel glad once in a second meeting I see that the returnee they are very interested for making this happening, for making this real, for making all the process to be well processed, to see that he is optimistic about his life back in home country.
It's a human journey that you are really taking part in and helping. And thank you so much for joining me today in this podcast, Salome Maxeiner from Caritas in Augsburg and Vin Balata from ETTC in Erbil, Iraq. You both show how to bridge pre- and post-departure counselling for Iraqi returnees. My name is Lisa Tallroth, and I think you should look out for more web and podcasts from Talk2Connect. Editor today, Jon Thunqvist. Bye for now.
This podcast is a production from the Swedish Migration Agency, produced with the financial assistance of the European Union and contracted by ICMPD through the Talk2Connect grant. And the content is the sole responsibility of the Swedish Migration Agency and not reflecting the position of the European Union or ICMPD.